The wind slashed across the bitter hollow plains like a living thing, cold enough to steal breath and reason. And there, against all sense and survival, Lydia Hartley collapsed in the snow. She didn't feel her hands anymore, didn't feel her feet, only the pounding terror of a mother who'd run out of time. Snow clung to her lashes. Her knees buckled, and as she fell forward, her voice broke open into the storm. Please save my children. The world blurred. A porch. A dark-coated man striding toward her. Heavy boots crushing ice. His shadow swallowing hers. She lifted her head just enough to see him, and the last thought she had before darkness claimed her was simple, desperate, and full of fear. Will he help? Or turn me away like the others? A breath. A heartbeat. A ragged whisper of hope. And then nothing. 12 hours earlier, on the edge of the high Montana plains, Lydia Hartley woke to the sound every mother feared, her daughter coughing the kind of cough that tasted like blood. The inside of the cabin windows were painted with frost thick as white lace. The air bit at her skin before she even sat up. Winter had frozen the house from the inside out. Mama, Ellie's voice trembled, wet, rattling wrong. Lydia threw the thin quilt aside. The mattress crackled with ice as she moved. Her feet hit the plank floor, and the shock nearly dropped her. She stumbled to her children curled beneath 2 old horse blankets by the stone hearth. Ellie was 9, too young to sound like someone dying. I can't get warm, Ellie whispered, curling tighter, her lips tinged blue. I'm here, baby. Lydia pressed her palm to the girl's forehead. The heat there wasn't right, burning and freezing, the kind of fever that stole children fast. Beside her lay her 6-year-old son, Thomas. He didn't move. Lydia's heart lurched. Tom. No answer. She shook him harder. Thomas Ray Hartley, you wake up right now. His eyes fluttered open only a sliver. Mama, I'm tired. No, panic clawed through her chest. You don't sleep, baby. You hear me? You don't sleep. She lifted him. His body hung limp, far too light. Bones. Skin. Nothing else. The hearth behind her was dead, ashes gray cold. She'd fallen asleep in the night, and the last log had burned out while her children struggled to breathe. I'm sorry, she whispered, chest breaking. I'm so sorry. Her gaze flew to the woodpile. Empty. She dug through cabinets. Drawers. The trunk. Nothing. Not one scrap of food left. They'd stretched a single potato across 4 days, boiled into a broth so thin it might as well have been water. She hadn't eaten in 6. Ellie coughed again, sharp, violent. A spot of red flecked her hand. No, no. Lydia closed her eyes, fighting for breath. There was only one person within miles who had the power to save them. Elias Creighton, owner of Silver Briar Ranch. A man who'd been carved into the land like iron and winter. A man the whole territory whispered about. Harsh. Unforgiving. Solitary. Fair, if you weren't stupid. And Lydia had one thread of hope. Barely a thread. Years ago, her late husband, Andrew, had saved one of Creighton's ranch hands from a frozen creek. She hadn't known until the funeral when the same hand, Oliver Tate, showed up with his hat crushed in his fingers. Your husband pulled me out the day ice near killed me, Oliver said softly. Mr. Creighton, don't forget a debt, ma'am. If you ever need something, you ask. Lydia had nodded, too numb then to understand what that meant. Now it meant everything. Silver Briar Ranch lay 12 miles north. 12 miles of open snow. 12 miles of wind that cut skin. 12 miles with a blizzard already building. She looked at her children. Ellie's pale lips. Thomas barely breathing. If she stayed, they wouldn't survive another hour. Lydia knelt beside Ellie, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I need you to listen, she whispered. Mama's going to get help. I'll be back. Before dark. Ellie grabbed her wrist with trembling fingers. Don't leave us. Please. Her voice broke. Lydia swallowed the sob, climbing her throat. You keep your brother warm, she said softly. Put every blanket on him. Talk to him. Don't let him sleep too deep. You remember how. Ellie nodded, crying silently. What if you don't come back? Lydia leaned forward and kissed both their foreheads. I will, she said, even though she didn't know if it was true. I swear it. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, pulled on cracked boots held together with twine, and stepped into the biting morning. Wind slammed her like a wall. But she walked. One step, another, and another. Don't think. Just move. The land stretched white and unforgiving. The sky was the color of metal. Snow shifted across the plains in sheets, hiding holes and frozen ruts. The first mile burned. The second numbed. By the third, she started talking to her late husband. "I'm going to Creighton," she whispered. "I know you wouldn't like it, but I don't have a choice, Andrew." The wind answered with a howl. "Oliver said he owed you. I'm going to collect." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry I couldn't keep the homestead. Sorry the cows died. Sorry the crops failed. Sorry I failed you. I'm trying, Andrew. I'm trying." A hidden rut caught her foot. She slammed her knee, told her. She tried. Her legs buckled. He caught her again, gentler this time. Inside his house, heat wrapped around her like mercy. A fire roared. Rugs lined the floor. A housekeeper, Mrs. Brienne, froze mid-step when she saw Lydia. "Food," Elias said. "Broth and bread. Nothing heavy." Lydia sat at the table, shaking uncontrollably. Mrs. Brienne brought the broth. The smell nearly made Lydia sob. She lifted the spoon with trembling fingers. "Slow," Elias said. "You rush it, you'll be sick." She obeyed. Tears streamed down her cheeks as warm food slid down her throat. When the bowl was empty, Elias spoke again. "Tell me what happened." So she did. The failed crops, the empty cupboards, the town's closed doors, the long nights with sickness and hunger. Every word spilled out in jagged pieces. He said nothing until she finished. "You walked 12 miles in a storm," he said, "to ask for food." "Yes." "You planning to walk 12 back?" "Yes." "In the dark?" I don't have a choice." He stood. His chair scraped against the floor like a verdict. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "We're taking the wagon to your place. We're bringing your kids here." Lydia gasped, heart hammering. "Here? For how long?" "As long as it takes." "For what?" "For them not to be dying." Her vision blurred. Relief, fear, disbelief, all crashing at once. We can't impose." "You got a better option?" She didn't. He put his hat on. "We're burning daylight." The wagon jolted hard as it broke through the rising drifts, wind slicing across the bitter hollow plains. Lydia sat wedged between Elias Creighton and the biting Montana storm, wrapped in his heavy coat and 2 extra blankets Mrs. Brienne had forced on her. The cold still snuck through like it had claws. Behind them, a second wagon followed, Oliver Tate driving it, piled high with food, blankets, medicine, and tools. Supplies Lydia had no right to hope for, but needed more desperately than breath. Elias handled the reins with quiet precision. His jaw was tight, his eyes narrowed against the blowing snow, the lines of his face carved by wind and years of working a land that made hard men harder. Neither of them spoke. Lydia held her shaking hands in her lap, trying to push warmth back in her fingers, trying not to imagine Ellie's skin cold as the floorboards, or Thomas drifting in a sleep he might never wake up from. What if they were too late? What if this mercy came hours too slow? The snow thickened. The wind howled low like something wounded. Elias pulled his hat lower, kept the horses steady through the drifts. "Almost there," he said. His voice wasn't gentle, but it was steady, solid, the kind of voice that didn't break, even when everything else did. Lydia clung to that steadiness as if it were rope. The cottonwoods appeared faintly through the snow, dead silhouettes against white. Her heart lurched. Then, through the blur of the storm, she saw it. Her cabin. Silent. Dark. Snow packed high against the door. "Please," she whispered. "Please let them be alive." Elias halted the wagon and jumped down before the horses fully stopped. Lydia tried to follow, stumbling. He caught her elbow again, steadying her without comment. She tore from his grasp and ran. "Ellie! Thomas!" The door resisted. Snow and ice had sealed it tight. She shoved again. It gave way suddenly, nearly throwing her to the floor. The cabin was freezing. Still. Too still. 2 small shapes lay beneath a mound of blankets near the dead hearth. "No," she breathed. "God, no." She fell to her knees beside them, ripping back blankets with frozen fingers. Ellie stirred, eyelids fluttering. Mama! The relief hit so hard Lydia sobbed like a broken thing. I'm here. I'm here, sweetheart. But Thomas, he didn't move. Elias dropped beside her without a sound. He brushed his hand across Thomas's cheek. The boy's skin was waxy cold, his breath faint, uneven. Jesus, he muttered. Kid's barely hanging on. Then, without hesitation, he lifted Thomas into his arms as if he weighed nothing. Pate! Elias barked. Get the girl. Oliver appeared in the doorway, sharp with concern. He wrapped Ellie in a wool blanket and lifted her gently. Mama, Ellie whispered, scared. You're going somewhere warm, Lydia said, trailing close behind. Somewhere with food. You're safe. I promise. She prayed she wasn't lying. They loaded the children carefully into the first wagon, tucking blankets around them, packing warmth anywhere it might hold. Lydia climbed in beside them, gathering both children against her. Elias looked at her once, long and steady. We move fast, he said. And he did. The wagon jerked forward, wheels digging deep into the snow. The storm had worsened, snow slashing sideways in angry sheets. Elias leaned into the wind, reins tight. Almost there, he said again. But this time Lydia believed him, because she could see the lights of Silver Briar Ranch glowing like a promise through the white, a warmth she once thought she'd never see again. Snow whipped across the yard like smoke as men ran from the bunkhouse. Get the kids, Elias shouted. Getting inside you now. Hands reached into the wagon, lifting Ellie and Thomas as if they were porcelain. Lydia scrambled down after them, nearly falling. Oliver grabbed her elbow, steadying her. Easy, ma'am, he said softly. Inside the kitchen, heat swallowed them whole. The great stone stove roared. Mrs. Brienne moved with the efficiency of someone who'd birthed and buried enough winters to know how to fight them. Lay them by the stove, she ordered. Strip the wet clothes, gently now. Lydia helped, her hands shaking so badly she could barely undo a button. Mrs. Brienne's hands were brisk, steady, sure. She wrapped Thomas in warm blankets, spooned broth against his lips. Small sips, she muttered. Easy, easy. Ellie sat against Lydia, shivering but awake. Lydia wrapped an arm around her daughter and kissed her forehead again and again, unable to stop. Elias stood by the doorway, boots dripping, breath still harsh from the storm. His presence filled the room, even when he said nothing. Why? Ellie whispered, staring at him with big, fearful eyes. Why'd he help us? Elias looked at the children, then at Lydia. Because you needed help, he said simply. And because your pa once helped one of mine. Ellie didn't understand, but Lydia did, and the weight of that debt pressed tears to her eyes. When she finally looked up at Elias, she whispered, thank you. But her voice cracked, too small for the gratitude she felt. He didn't soften, didn't brush it off, just nodded. Get some rest, he said. We'll talk tomorrow. Then he left, boots thumping across the wood floor. Mrs. Brienne thrust a steaming mug of broth into Lydia's hands. Drink, she said. You look near dead yourself. Lydia's fingers curled around the mug. The warmth nearly hurt. She drank slowly, tasting salt, herbs, and mercy. The kind she wasn't used to receiving. Around her, the kitchen bustled with urgency. Ranch hands bringing blankets, Mrs. Brienne boiling water, Oliver checking both children gently. Life rushed around her, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. Lydia woke slowly. Warmth, softness, a bed, a real bed. For 3 long seconds, she didn't know where she was. Then the memories hit her, cold, storm, Elias's coat around her shoulders, the children limp as rag dolls in the wagon. She sat up fast. The quilt slipped from her shoulders. It was heavy, warm, hand-stitched. Her nightgown, clean, soft, was not her own. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She swung her legs over the side, and her feet sank into a thick rug instead of frozen boards. Her old clothes were gone. In their place, a neatly folded wool dress. Dark green, simple, beautifully made. Her eyes burned. Someone had cared enough to find her something that fit. She dressed quickly, fingers clumsy with urgency, then ripped open the door. Voices floated up from downstairs. A child laughing. Her breath hitched. She flew down the stairs, nearly stumbling. The kitchen was warm, loud, alive. Ellie and Thomas sat at the long table eating eggs and toast. Real eggs, thick-cut, toast slathered with jam. Thomas's cheeks were pink. Ellie's eyes were bright. Mrs. Brienne flipped flapjacks at the stove, glancing over. "Well, you're alive," she said dryly. "Mama." Thomas scrambled to her, nearly knocking her over. Lydia knelt, hugging him so tight he squeaked. "You're warm," she whispered, burying her face in his hair. "You're warm." Ellie came slower, but her smile was small and real. Mrs. Brienne nodded toward a chair. "Sit. You need food more than they do." Soon a plate appeared in front of Lydia. Eggs, bacon, toast with blackberry jam. More food than she'd seen in weeks. Her hand shook as she picked up the fork. "Slow," Mrs. Brienne warned, "or Mr. Creighton will have my hide if he gets sick." Lydia took a bite, then another. Each one felt like a miracle. A door swung open. Cold air swept in. Two men stepped inside. Oliver, grinning, stamping snow from his boots. And Elias. He filled the doorway without trying. Snow dusted his dark coat. His hat hung from his fingers. His expression unreadable. But his eyes went straight to Lydia. She stood quickly. "Mr. Creighton." "Mrs. Hartley," he said, nodding back. He looked at the children. "You two feeling better?" Thomas beamed. Ellie nodded shyly. "Good," Elias said. Mrs. Brienne poured him a mug of black coffee and placed it at his seat. He sat, posture straight, strangely formal in the warm kitchen. "We need to talk," he said. Lydia's stomach sank. "Yes, sir." "Not here." His gaze flicked toward the children. "Oliver, show them the horses. Keep them close." "Yes, sir," Oliver said, brightening. "Come on, you two. Ever seen a Mustang up close?" Thomas practically vibrated. Ellie hesitated, eyes on Lydia. "It's all right," Lydia said softly. "Go on." When the door closed behind them, the warmth of the room seemed to thin. Mrs. Brienne slipped out into the pantry, giving them false privacy. Elias set his coffee down. "Your homestead," he said. "It's done. Roof's caving. Foundation's rotted. Even if you fixed it, you'd starve there." Lydia swallowed hard. "I know. You got family anywhere?" "No money." "No, sir." "Skills." She hesitated. "I can cook." "So, keep books." "I managed our accounts when we had them." Elias studied her. "You ever work outside your home?" "No, sir. I married young." He leaned back, arms crossing. "So you got two children, no home, no money, and no work experience." When said aloud, it was devastating. "Yes," she whispered. "What was your plan?" Elias asked. "If I gave you food yesterday." She lowered her eyes. "I didn't have one. Just needed one more day." "Well, you need more than a day now." He stood. "You're staying here." Lydia blinked. "What?" "You and your kids. Room and board. You'll work for your keep. Mrs. Brienne needs help. You help her. I pay you. You'll earn a wage." The room tilted. "You're offering me a job. And a home," he said. "For as long as you need it." Her voice shook. "Why?" "Because you need it," he said simply. "Because your kids need it. Because your husband saved a man I care about. And because—" He stopped. The silence stretched. Then he finished quietly. "Because no child dies on my land if I can stop it." Something in Lydia's chest broke, cleanly open. She lowered her gaze, tears burning her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll work hard." "I swear, I know," Elias said. His voice gentled just enough to make her look up. "Let's get to work." Snow still clung to the eaves of Silver Briar Ranch, but inside the walls the world felt startlingly warm. Lydia hadn't known true warmth in months, not the kind that seeped in a bone and let a mother breathe again. The first morning she woke in the ranch house, Thomas snored softly beside her on a cot, cheeks pink from real heat. Ellie slept curled against her, one arm over Lydia's waist like she was afraid to lose her in the night. Lydia brushed their hair back, kissed their foreheads, and let herself smile. Small, tired, but real. Then she rose quietly. There was work to do. Mrs. Brienne didn't tolerate idleness, and Lydia welcomed it. Work meant purpose. Purpose meant she wasn't slipping into that hollow place grief had carved in her months ago. When she reached the kitchen, Mrs. Brienne already had the stove roaring and flour scattered like snow across the counter. "You're late," Mrs. Brienne announced. "It's barely dawn," Lydia said. "For ranch work? That's near midday." Mrs. Brienne's face was stern, but her eyes were warm. Lydia tied on an apron and joined her. They kneaded dough, chopped onions, filled kettles. Lydia moved quickly, clumsy at first, then steadier, muscle memory waking after months of exhaustion. Mrs. Brienne nodded once. "Good. You're teachable." Lydia laughed softly. It felt strange in her throat from disuse. Outside, the rhythmic thud of boots on frozen ground echoed beneath the window. Lydia glanced out. Elias Creighton walked the yard, coat open, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow, marking fence posts for repairs. His breath fogged the morning air. His stride was sure, his focus absolute. Watching him felt like watching a man carved from the land itself. Quiet, deliberate, unshakable. Mrs. Brienne caught her staring. "He's a hard man," she said, voice low. "Hard because life made him that way. Don't expect softness." "I'm not," Lydia said, though the words stuck slightly. Mrs. Brienne lifted a brow. "But you're grateful to him." "Yes," Lydia whispered. "More than I can say." Mrs. Brienne softened. "Then show with work, not words. Mr. Creighton trusts effort more than thanks." Lydia nodded. That she could do. Later that morning, Oliver knocked on the kitchen door, stamping snow from his boots. "Miss Lydia," he said, hat in hand. "Got something to show the young uns." Thomas perked up instantly, crumbs still on his chin. Ellie looked more cautious. Oliver smiled. "Got a full-born last spring. Sweet little thing. You want to see?" Thomas bounded to his feet. "Yes." Ellie hesitated, eyes flicking to Lydia. Lydia knelt beside her daughter. "Go on," she whispered. "It's safe here." Ellie swallowed but nodded. Outside, the world was blinding white and blue. The sun glinted off drifts taller than Thomas. The wind had softened to a playful whisper. Oliver led them into the warm barn. The smell of hay and horses wrapped around them like a memory. Thomas gasped. A Palomino mare turned her head toward them, and beside her stood a small golden foal, fluffy and curious. "She's beautiful," Ellie whispered. "You want to pet her?" Oliver asked. Ellie froze. "Can I?" "Sure can." Ellie reached out, slow, gentle. The foal sniffed her hand and nuzzled her fingers. Ellie giggled. A soft, bright sound Lydia hadn't heard in months. Lydia's eyes stung. Thomas buried his hands in the foal's mane. "Mama, she likes me." "She does," Lydia said, heart full. From the barn doorway, Elias watched. Quiet, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. But his eyes weren't cold. Not today. At midday, Lydia helped set the long ranch table. Men filed in, boots heavy with snow, voices loud. The ranch hands ate as if meals were battles they prepared for. Lydia nearly tripped twice weaving between them with bowls and plates, but Mrs. Brienne barked guidance until Lydia found her rhythm. When Elias entered, the room shifted subtly. Voices lowered, spines straightened. He commanded respect without asking for it. He sat at the head of the table. Lydia served him last. "Thank you," he said. Simple words, quiet and firm. But Lydia's stomach fluttered in a way she didn't expect. She nodded and stepped back. Halfway through the meal, Thomas crawled into her lap, falling asleep mid-bite, head heavy on her chest. Ellie leaned against Lydia's shoulder, eating in slow, careful bites. Elias watched them for a long moment. "Then, you'll stay in the south bedroom," he said to Lydia. "Warmer than the guest room. Kids, too." Lydia blinked. "Mr. Creighton, I don't want to put you out." "You're not," he said. "Room's been empty for years." The room quieted a little. Even Oliver glanced up. Lydia swallowed. "Why years?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened. Something dark passed through his eyes. "That story's not for today," he said. Then he stood, ending the conversation. Just before sundown, a shout tore across the yard. "Look out!" Lydia jerked her head toward the sound. Thomas, chasing a stray chicken, slipped on a patch of ice near the old stone well. "Thomas!" Lydia screamed. He skidded, feet flying out, straight toward the open side of the well. Elias moved before thought. In 3 long strides, he grabbed Thomas by the back of his coat, yanking him off the ice and into his arms just as the boy's boots scraped the well's edge. Lydia ran, breath breaking, heart in her throat. Thomas burst into tears, clinging to Elias's neck. "I didn't mean to, it's all right," Elias said, voice low, steady as earth. "You're safe. I got you." Lydia reached them, dropping to her knees. "Thomas, sweetheart, are you hurt?" He shook his head, still crying. Elias set him down gently. Lydia's hands flew everywhere, his arms, his legs, his face, checking for bruises, cuts, broken bones. Elias watched her, something shifting behind his eyes. "You gotta watch him," he said quietly. "I do," Lydia whispered. "I do," but her voice broke. "I can't lose him," she whispered. "I can't lose either of them." Elias's expression softened, barely. "You won't," he said. "Not here." Lydia looked up at him, eyes wet, breath trembling. And for one suspended moment, nothing in the world existed except the 3 of them, shaken and breathing in the cold air. After supper, Lydia tucked the children into the warm south bedroom. Thomas slept almost instantly. Ellie lay awake, watching the firelight dance across the wall. "Mama," Ellie whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. Do we live here now?" Lydia brushed hair from her daughter's forehead. "For now. Do you like Mr. Creighton?" Lydia's breath caught. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "He's been kind," she said finally. "Kindness is rare." Ellie nodded sleepily. "He looks at you like he's thinking a lot." Lydia blushed. "Go to sleep." Ellie smiled, eyes drifting shut. Lydia sat beside the bed long after they slept, listening to their breathing. Warm, steady, safe. Her hands shook with relief. She didn't know what tomorrow brought. But tonight was mercy. Later, when the house was quiet, Lydia found herself walking into the main room. Elias sat by the fire, boots off, shirt sleeves rolled, lamp casting warm shadows across his face. He didn't look up. "Kids asleep?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded but said nothing. The silence wasn't cold, just thick with unsaid things. Lydia sat across from him, hands folded in her lap. "Mr. Creighton, Elias," he corrected quietly. Her breath stumbled. "Elias," she repeated. It felt strange, too personal, too intimate for a man who carried storms in his bones. "Thank you," she said softly. "For today. For everything." He looked into the fire. "You don't owe me thanks." "No, but I feel it." His jaw tightened. "You walked 12 miles in a blizzard for your children," he said. "That's something." Her eyes burnt. "I didn't think anyone would help," she admitted. "The town, they turned me away." "They're fools," Elias said. The heat in his voice startled her. She looked at him fully now. For the first time, she saw not just hardness, but sorrow. And something else. Something warmer than she expected from a man who kept himself locked away. "Lydia," he said, voice lower now. "You and your kids, you're safe here. You stay as long as you need." Her breath trembled. "Thank you," she whispered again. "Truly." Elias stood abruptly, too abruptly, and reached for his coat. "Long day," he said. "Get some rest." But when he passed her, his hand brushed hers on the arm of the chair. Just a graze. Barely a second. Enough to make her heart jump. He froze. She froze. Then he pulled back slowly and walked away. Lydia sat in silence, staring at the space where his hand had touched hers. Snow fell outside the window. Inside, something warmer fell softly into place. Lydia returned to the children's room and lay between them on the big, warm bed. Ellie mumbled something in her sleep and reached for Lydia's hand. Thomas rolled closer, breath warm and even. Lydia closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she felt safe enough to sleep. She didn't notice the shadow that paused outside the window. Didn't see the footprints in the snow that didn't belong to any ranch hand. Didn't hear the horse retreat into the trees. But Elias noticed. He stepped outside, jaw clenched against the cold, eyes narrowing toward the dark pines. Someone had been on his land. Someone watching. And tomorrow, things would change. The next morning dawned clear and sharp, sunlight glinting off the snow like shards of glass. The storm had passed, But an uncomfortable stillness lingered over Silver Briar Ranch, quiet in a way that made the hair on the back of Elias Creighton's neck rise. He'd been out before first light, tracking the prints he'd found near the house. They curved behind the barn, past the corral, then disappeared into the thick stand of pines bordering the ridge. Whoever it was knew how to hide a trail. Elias crouched low, fingertips brushing the faint indentation of a hoof print half filled with frost. It was fresh enough to worry him, old enough to frustrate him. Someone had been close. Too close. He stood slowly, breath fogging the cold morning air, gaze fixed on the tree line. "Come back if you want," he muttered. "But you won't leave the second time." Lydia was already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, kneading dough while Mrs. Brienne chopped vegetables. The morning light warmed her face, turning her dark hair a soft chestnut. She worked with quiet focus, shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. She didn't notice Elias step into the doorway, but Mrs. Brienne did. "Coffee," she said without looking up, already pouring it. Elias took the mug, eyes on Lydia. "Morning," he said. She startled slightly, then returned his greeting with a small smile that tugged at something deep in him. "Good morning, Elias." He nodded to her dough. "You're catching on fast." "She is," Mrs. Brienne said proudly. "Not many folk learn my kitchen in 2 days." Lydia flushed, wiping her hands. "I'm grateful to be useful." Elias watched her a second too long. Mrs. Brienne cleared her throat pointedly. He turned away. "Kids up." In the parlor, Lydia said. "Oliver's showing them how to whittle." Elias's brow twitched. "Oliver? With a knife? Around children? They seem safe," Lydia said, almost laughing. Elias grunted, but didn't argue. He walked out before anyone noticed the faint smile he tried to hide. Oliver sat cross-legged on the rug, a block of soft pine in one hand and a dull carving knife in the other. "See here," he told Thomas. "Keep the blade pointed away. Always." Thomas nodded solemnly. Ellie sat further back, watching with quiet curiosity. Lydia peeked in, heart lifting at the sight. Thomas looked warm, federal alive. Color returning to cheeks she feared would never pink again. Elias entered just as Oliver proudly held up a crude wooden horse. "Look, Mr. Creighton," Thomas announced. "It's mine." Elias crouched beside him. "That right? You carved that." "Oliver showed me," Thomas said. "He said I'm a natural." Elias took the tiny wooden horse, turning it in his big hand. It was uneven, rough, barely shaped, but to Thomas it was a masterpiece. Elias set it gently in the boy's palm. "Keep it close," he said. "It'll remind you how strong your hands can be." Thomas beamed. Lydia watched the interaction quietly. Her chest tightened. Elias didn't know it, but the way he looked at her children, the way he knelt, spoke softly, protected them, it awakened something she'd buried beneath months of fear. Something fragile, dangerous, hopeful, and she didn't know what to do with it. By midday, the sun warmed the yard enough for snow to melt in thin rivulets. Ranch hands repaired fences. Horses snorted in the corral. Lydia hung linens on a rope line, the wind snapping cloth around her. Elias crossed the yard, heading her direction with purposeful strides. "We need to talk," he said. Lydia froze. "Are the children—" "They're fine," he said quickly. "Nothing like that." Relief washed over her. But he wasn't smiling. His jaw was tight. "Last night," he said, lowering his voice, "there were tracks by your window." Her heart stopped. "Tracks?" she whispered. "What kind?" "Boot prints. One horse. Whoever it was left fast." Lydia's breath hitched. "No," she whispered. "He can't have found us." "Who?" Elias asked. Lydia swayed. A hand went to her stomach. Elias steadied her by the elbow. His touch was firm, grounding. "Tell me," he said. "Who's looking for you?" Lydia swallowed hard. "My late husband's brother," she said. "Carver Hartley." Elias stiffened. "He's not a good man," Lydia whispered. "Not good at all. Why would he be following you?" Her voice trembled. "Debt," she said. "Andrew owed him money. Gambling. Carver said he wanted compensation. And when Andrew died, he said," her throat closed. "He said I was the debt now." Elias's face darkened with a slow, deep fury. "He threatened you?" Lydia nodded, tears gathering. When I wouldn't go with him, he took things from the house. Said he'd come back for more. Said he'd take the children if I didn't, she broke off, shaking. Elias stood perfectly still, except for his jaw, which worked like he was holding back violence. You're safe here, he said finally. I won't let any man touch you or your children. Ever. Something inside Lydia cracked open. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. Elias lifted his hand, hesitated, then brushed the tears away with his thumb. It was gentle, too gentle. Her breath caught. She stepped back quickly, overwhelmed. I should check the laundry. He let her go, but his eyes followed her until she disappeared into the house. That evening, Lydia and Mrs. Brienne worked side by side preparing supper. The kitchen filled with warm smells, roasted chicken, herbs, rising bread. The fire crackled steady. At the table, ranch hands talked softly, voices lowered as if respecting the calm. Ellie curled next to Lydia as she sliced vegetables. Thomas played with his wooden horse, making soft galloping sounds. Peace settled over the room like a quilt. Elias entered, and the energy shifted again, quietly but definitely. He sat at the table, reading ledgers by lamplight. His coat hung open. His shirt sleeves were rolled enough to show the strength in his forearms. Lydia tried not to look. She failed. More than once. He didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did, and pretended otherwise. After supper, Lydia helped clear the table. Elias stood, took his plate to the counter, something he'd never do in front of ranch hands, and murmured to her, "You cooked well tonight." Her breath stumbled. "Thank you." Then, "You're doing right by your kids." Her throat tightened. "I'm trying." "You're doing more than trying." Their eyes met. The room seemed to hush. But before either spoke again, Oliver burst through the door. "Elias, you better come see this." Elias straightened. "What is it?" Oliver's face was pale, jaw tense. "Found something on the ridge." Elias glanced once at Lydia. Her hand shook. "Stay inside," he told her. Then he followed Oliver into the night. Lydia carried the children upstairs and tucked them into bed. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. "Is everything okay?" Ellie asked. "Yes, Lydia lit. Everything's fine, sweetheart." But after the children drifted off, Lydia went to the window. Down below, lantern light flickered in the yard. Elias and Oliver stood near the barn, faces grim, staring at something on the ground. Elias lifted it. A boot print, now on the ranch hands. And beside it, a torn piece of fabric. Dark, tattered, recognizable. Lydia's knees gave out. She sank to the floor, pressing both hands over her mouth. Carver had found her. He was close. And tomorrow, he might come for her children. Lydia crawled into bed between Ellie and Thomas, pulling them close, shaking softly. Downstairs, the back door opened. Closed. Boots climbed the stairs, slow, heavy, deliberate. A pause outside her room. Then a quiet knock. "Lydia." Elias's voice murmured through the door. "We need to talk." She tightened her grip around her children and whispered a trembling prayer. Lydia opened the bedroom door slowly, careful not to wake the children. Ellie murmured something in her sleep and curled tighter beneath the quilt. Thomas clutched his wooden horse, breath soft and even. Elias stood in the hall, lamp in hand. The warm light carved deep shadows across his jaw, softening nothing, exposing everything. He looked troubled. Lydia pulled the door shut behind her and stepped into the hall. "Did something happen?" she whispered. Elias didn't answer at first. He studied her face, her fear, her exhaustion, the way her hands trembled even when she tried to hide it. Finally he spoke. "Let's sit by the fire." Lydia hesitated, glancing at the children's door. "They'll be safe," he said. "Oliver's on watch outside the room. No one's getting past him." She exhaled shakily and followed him downstairs. The parlor glowed in orange shadows. Elias set the lamp on a table near the hearth and stirred the fire until the flames rose tall. Snow tapped against the windows like ghostly fingers. Lydia sat on the edge of the long sofa, hands folded tightly. Elias stood for a moment, staring into the fire like it held answers. Then he turned toward her. "Oliver found tracks," he said. "Fresh ones. Too close." She swallowed. "Carver." Elias nodded once. It fits. The prints are small enough for a man riding alone. And the fabric Oliver found. He pulled something from his coat pocket. Lydia's breath hitched. A scrap of dark wool. Torn. Dirty. Frayed. It came from Carver Hartley's coat. She covered her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. No, she whispered. Elias, he's here. He's watching, Elias said. Has been since last night. Her body swayed forward. Elias caught her elbow, steadying her before she fell. Lydia, look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. This house, he said slowly, is the safest place in Bitter Hollow. I'll see to that myself. No one's touching you or your children while I'm breathing. Her tears spilled over. I'm so tired of running, she whispered. You're not running anymore, he said. You're here. With us. She didn't know how to respond to the us. Didn't know what to do with the warmth it sparked. But Elias wasn't finished. Now I need you to tell me everything, he said. All of it. No holding back. So I know exactly what kind of danger we're in. Lydia wiped her cheeks and nodded. Then she told him. It came out in broken pieces. The early years with Andrew, gentle, hopeful, simple. The miscarriage. The long winter of hunger. Andrew's drinking. His slow slide into desperation. The gambling. The debts. Carver sniffing around like a wolf, waiting for Andrew to break. And when he did, Carver stepped in, calling himself family, pretending concern while claiming rights he had no business claiming. He said Andrew owed him more than he could ever repay, Lydia whispered, voice raw. And when Andrew died, Carver said I was the only thing left to settle the debt. Elias's lip curled in disgust. What did he do? He tried to take me. Lydia's voice cracked. I fought him off. I locked him out. But he said he'd come back. That if I didn't give him what he wanted, he'd take the children instead. Elias's hands closed into fists. No man threatens children on my land, he growled. Ever. She flinched, not from him, but from the memory. Elias softened instantly. I'm not angry at you, he said. I'm angry for you. Her breath trembled. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire popped softly, filling the silence with warmth and danger. Then Elias moved. He knelt in front of her. Lydia's breath stopped. His voice, when he spoke, was low and steady. You won't face that man alone. Not again. He reached for her hands, slowly, like he was giving her time to pull back. She didn't. His hands closed around hers, work rough, warm, grounding. Lydia Hartley, he said softly. You and your children belong under my protection now. As long as you're on this ranch, no man lays a hand on you. Not while I can still stand. Her throat tightened. The room blurred. Elias, she whispered. I don't know why you're doing this. I do, he said. Her heart hammered. He looked up at her with eyes that had softened into something dangerous. Something tender he didn't let the world see. I'm doing this, he said, because I won't watch another family freeze or starve or suffer if I can prevent it. His voice gentled even more. And because I care what happens to you. Lydia inhaled sharply, chest aching with the force of it. He squeezed her hands. You're strong, he said. Stronger than you think. But even strong folks need someone standing with them. A tear slipped down her cheek. Without thinking, Elias brushed it away with his thumb. Her breath caught. Her pulse stilled. The world narrowed to that one touch. He froze, realizing what he'd done. Then he slowly lowered his hand. Lydia, he said quietly, you matter here. You matter to me. The words shattered something inside her, something she had been holding together with sheer will for months. She leaned forward, just slightly, and rested her forehead against his. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't a confession. It was something quieter. Sure, more dangerous. Elias didn't move for a long moment. He simply breathed with her, as if promising without words to carry anything she couldn't. Then, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Both froze. Elias pulled back abruptly, standing fast. Children, he murmured. Go to them. Lydia scrambled to her feet, wiping her face, fighting to steady her breath. She turned to go, but Elias caught her wrist gently. One more thing. She looked back. His voice lowered into something fierce. If Carver steps 1 foot on my land tonight, He won't walk off it. Upstairs, Ellie stood sleepily in the hall, rubbing her eyes. Mama? I heard you talking. It's all right, Lydia whispered, kneeling. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. Ellie leaned into her chest. Are we safe here? Lydia swallowed. She pulled Ellie close. Yes, she whispered. We're safe. She carried Ellie back to bed and tucked her in beside Thomas. The children curled instinctively toward her warmth. She lay between them, brushing their hair back, her hands still shaking. Elias's words replayed in her mind. You matter here. You matter to me. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of her children anchor her. But downstairs, Elias gathered his rifle, lit the lantern, stepped outside into the moonlit snow. Oliver stood by the barn with another lantern, jaw set tight. You think he'll come tonight? Oliver asked. I think he's close, Elias replied. And I think he's stupid enough to test me. The two men walked the perimeter of the yard, boots crunching through deep drifts. The air was sharp as broken glass. The sky clear enough to see miles of dark pine and silver hills. Somewhere in that darkness, a man stalked the ranch with ill intent. Elias scanned the ridge with narrowed eyes. If he's watching, he muttered, let him see this. He lifted the lantern high, its light sweeping across the yard. I see you, he whispered into the cold. And you won't touch what's mine. The wind carried the words into the trees. Something moved far beyond the fence line. A faint shift. A flicker. A shadow. Elias's jaw tightened. It's him, he said. Oliver lifted his rifle. Orders. Tonight we watch, Elias said. Tomorrow we end it. Inside, Lydia curled around her children, half asleep, unaware of the figures patrolling outside like silent sentinels. Unaware that danger crouched just beyond the fence. Unaware that Elias kept looking back toward the south bedroom window, where soft lamplight glowed behind curtains. Where Lydia slept with one hand curled protectively over Ellie's back. He stared at that window until dawn colored the horizon. And when the first hint of light touched the snow, Elias made a silent vow. No matter what comes, she will not face it alone. Morning broke pale and brittle over Bitter Hollow. Lydia awoke slowly, the kind of waking that came from a night without true rest. Ellie and Thomas were still curled against her, warm beneath the covers. For a moment, just one merciful moment, peace hung in the air. Then the memory crashed back. Carver. Tracks near the pasture. Elias saying, we end this tomorrow. Her breath hitched. She rose quietly, tucked the quilts around the children, and stepped into the hallway. Voices drifted up from below, low, tense, controlled. She recognized Elias's. Won't let him get within 10 yards of the house. Another voice, Oliver's. What if he comes early? Slips past the ridge? He won't, Elias said. I know how he thinks. Lydia descended the stairs slowly. The men looked up the moment they saw her. Elias's expression softened, just slightly, but tension still carved lines across his face. You should be resting, he said quietly. I can't, she admitted. Not until this is finished. Oliver nodded toward the window. Tracks along the east slope. Fresh again. Lydia's stomach twisted. How close? She whispered. Too close, Elias said. Close enough to smell wood smoke. She gripped the edge of the table to keep steady. What does he want? She asked, though part of her already knew. Elias stepped closer. The lamplight caught the silver threading his hair, the tight set of his jaw, the weight of everything he wasn't saying. He wants you, Elias said gently. And he wants control. Folks like Carver Hartley, they don't know how to lose clean. Lydia swallowed hard. Then let me speak to him. Both men froze. Absolutely not, Elias said. I won't hide, Lydia insisted. Not anymore. I won't let him chase us through every county in Montana. Elias stepped forward, voice low. It wasn't anger, it was fear wrapped in steel. Lydia Hartley, I am not risking you. Not today. Not ever. Her heart thudded painfully. You can't keep me locked away. I can keep you safe, he answered. And what happens tomorrow? She whispered. Next week? Next month? What if he never stops? Elias's jaw flexed. He paced once, stopped, crossed his arms. You don't understand the kind of man he is. I understand him better than anyone, she said. I lived under his shadow. And you won't again. The words landed like a vow. Oliver cleared his throat. Boss, Elias exhaled sharply, looking toward the windows where pale daylight crept across the yard. We're going to the ridge, he said. Oliver, take the north trail. I'll take the pines. He turned to Lydia. You stay inside, near the fire. The children stay with you. You don't open the door to anyone but me. Lydia held his eyes. You can't kill him, she whispered. Elias froze. If he draws on me, he said evenly, I'm not dying for that man. I'm not asking you to, she said. I'm asking you not to stain your hands on him. He hesitated, just long enough for the truth to show beneath the surface. What he's done to you, Elias murmured. I don't have clean hands where he's concerned. Her breath caught. I'm not worth your life, she said quietly. He stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat rolling off him. You are, he said. Slow, certain, devastating. She closed her eyes. Elias touched her face, just once, then stepped back. I'll come back, he said. And he and Oliver were gone. Hours dragged, the kind of hours that stretch a woman thin from worry. Lydia made tea she didn't drink. She tried reading aloud to the children, though her voice trembled too much. She checked the windows until her eyes blurred. Every creak of the cabin made her jump. Every gust of wind felt like footsteps. Outside, snow began to fall. Heavy, silent flakes drifting through the air like ash. Mid-morning passed. Then noon. Still no sign of Elias or Oliver. Lydia stood by the coat rack, hands pressed tight against her heart, listening to the wind rattle the porch boards. Thomas, she murmured, stay close to your sister. Why, Mama? He asked. Just stay with her. Ellie took her brother's hand without asking questions. Lydia paced, prayed, try not to think about a gunshot echoing through the pines. But she could feel it, danger building like a storm. And then, a horse screamed outside. Hooves thundered, followed by a shout. Lydia! Her heart nearly stopped. It wasn't Elias's voice. It was Carver's. The knock shook the whole house. 3 pounding strikes. Thomas whimpered. Ellie grabbed Lydia's skirt, eyes wide. Mama, he's here. Lydia's hand shook as she ushered them toward the pantry. Inside, she whispered, Don't come out unless I call. Ellie nodded, pulling Thomas with her. Lydia shut the door, pressed her back to it for a heartbeat, then turned. The pounding came again. Open this door, Lydia. She walked toward it, slow, quiet, deliberate. Her legs trembled, but she kept moving. She reached the door, pressed her palm to the wood. Carver's voice came low and grotesquely calm. I know you're in there. Open up. Lydia took a breath. Then another. Go away, Carver. Silence. Then a deep, ugly laugh. You always were stubborn, he said. But now you've gone and made trouble. Running off to a ranch full of men. Spreading lies about me in town. Making me look like a fool. She stared at the door, imagining his smirk. You did that all on your own, she said. His voice sharpened. You're coming with me. No, you don't get to say no. Yes, Lydia said louder. I do. The door bowed under the force of his kick. Wood creaked. No, Lydia shouted. My children are here. That's why you're opening this damn door. Lydia backed away, breath shuddering. He kicked again. Another crack. One more and the door would splinter. She braced herself when a gunshot split the air. Then another. Then, step away from that door. Elias. Lydia nearly collapsed. Outside, boots crunched hard against snow. Carver snarled. You should have stayed out of this, Mallory. Elias's voice was ice. Lydia moved back from the door. She did. The next moment, the door blasted inward as Carver's boot connected one last time. He lunged over the threshold, but before he could take another step, Elias tackled him from the side. They crashed into the porch railing, snow spraying. Get away from her. Elias roared. Carver swung wildly. Elias blocked, struck back. The fight rolled into the yard. 2 men locked in a violent storm of fists and boots and rage years in the making. Carver drew a knife. Elias. Lydia screamed. Elias jerked back just in time. The blade glanced off his coat. Carver lunged again. Elias caught his arm, twisted. Carver howled. The knife clattered into the snow. Elias shoved him down, planting a boot on his chest. "It's over," Elias growled. "You're not terrorizing this family again." Carver spat blood in the snow. "You think she'll love you?" he snarled. "You think she's anything but—" Elias hit him once, hard enough to silence him. Then he stepped back. "Get off my land," he said. "Now, before I forget, she asked me not to kill you." Carver staggered up, swaying. "You'll regret this," he muttered. "I doubt it." Carver stumbled toward his horse, clutching his ribs, and mounted with a groan. He glared back once, furious and humiliated. Then he rode off into the falling snow. Elias watched until Carver vanished into the ridgeline. Only then did he turn. Lydia stood frozen on the porch, one hand over her mouth, tears streaming freely. Elias walked slowly toward her, chest heaving, blood on his lip. "LYD," he began. She threw herself into his arms. He caught her with a groan of relief, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You're safe," he murmured into her hair. "You're safe. It's over." She clung to him, sobbing into his shoulder. "You came back," she whispered. "I didn't know if I'll always come back," he said, pulling her closer. "Always." Later, Oliver hauled Carver's abandoned tracks to the sheriff. The law would deal with him. For good. Inside the house, Lydia tended Elias's split lip with trembling hands. "You scared me half to death," she whispered. "Me?" Elias huffed. "You nearly opened the door on him." She swallowed. "I wasn't going to, but I had to face him." "You did," he said, "and you didn't break." Her hand stilled on his cheek. He caught her wrist gently. "Lydia," he said, "there's something you ought to know." She looked into his eyes, gray-blue and storm-worn and steady. "When I saw him at that door," Elias whispered, "I realized something." She held her breath. "You and those children, you're the best thing that's walked into my life in years. Maybe ever." Her lips parted. "And I'm done pretending I don't care deeper than I should." She touched his jaw, breath shaking. "And what if I feel the same?" she whispered. His breath caught. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips touched, soft, unsure, trembling with everything unsaid. The kiss deepened, a promise, a confession, a beginning carved from survival. When they finally broke apart, Lydia rested her forehead against his. "What now?" she whispered. Elias slid his hands to her waist. "Now," he murmured, "you and the children stay. Not as guests, not out of fear." He lifted her chin gently. "But because this is home, if you want it to be." Lydia exhaled softly. "I want it," she whispered. "More than anything." Elias smiled, the kind of smile she'd never seen from him before. Warm, young, alive. He held her like he'd waited a lifetime. And for the first time in months, maybe years, Lydia felt it. Safety, hope, a future, together. That night, Bitter Hollow slept under soft, falling snow. The fire glowed steady in the hearth. Ellie and Thomas slept peacefully upstairs. And in the parlor, Lydia curled into Elias's arms beneath a quilt, his hand resting over hers. Outside, the world was cold. Inside, there was warmth enough to last a lifetime. Lydia breathed in his scent, closed her eyes, and whispered words she once thought she'd never say again. "Thank you for saving us." Elias pressed his lips to her forehead. "No," he whispered. "You saved me, too." The snow fell. The night held quiet, and a new life began in the heart of the Bitter Hollow woods, built not on fear, but on the fierce, stubborn, impossible hope that two broken people could heal together. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wild West Emotional Tales, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.